Hi, I'm TRX Master Instructor Amy McMullen, and welcome to your next TRX workout. Today, I've got a quick 30-minute all-core strength workout for beginner levels. We're going to be working the abs, the obliques, the low back, also a little bit of booty and hamstring action in there as well. So we've got 3 rounds for you today. We're going to be starting off with some standing core exercises and then go to the ground for some floor suspended core exercises. We'll do that 3 times through. Each round is going to get a little bit more challenging with the variations, but I'll still offer you some of those beginner options if you want them. All you're going to need today is a TRX suspension trainer and a mat. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to hit go here on our timer. We'll have 15 seconds to get started. My straps are at mid-length, and we're going to start with some Trx Squat Rows. So I'm going to stand facing my anchor point with my arms straight out, palms down, little bit of an angle, feet wider than my hips. I'm going to drop my tailbone towards the floor, and then I'm going to pull my chest to my hands. So this squat row I do almost every warm-up because it's such a great move. It gets your shoulders, elbows, spine, hips, knees, and ankles all in one go. So I like efficiency, and that's what we're going to do. It's 2 separate moves, the hack squat and the high row, but you can start to smoosh them together if you feel really comfortable there. All right, 2, 1, and rest. From here, we've got some Trx rollouts. You're going to see these later in our exercise, so go ahead and get used to them now. We've got, we're standing facing away from the anchor point. Our palms are down, arms are right in front of our shoulders. I'm going to come up onto my toes and straighten my hips. My arms are going to raise up, and then I'm going to lower them back down. When my arms raise up, I'm kind of standing in this like standing plank position. My plank is going to come forward, and then I'm going to bring myself back to the top by lowering my arms. So raise my arms. I'm going to go out to where my abs feel a little shaky, and then I'm going to lower back down. I'm going to try to keep my head and neck still. All right? So not a super big move, but an effective one. We've got some single arm golf swings here. This is for a little bit of rotation and shoulder work. I'm going to face the anchor point with my palms down at about hip level. I'm going to take my knees, my feet hip width apart, a little quarter squat down, and I'm just going to rotate one arm up towards the ceiling, come back to center, and then the other arm up towards the ceiling. I'm keeping my eyes on the ground. So once you guys have seen this one, go ahead and look back at the floor. As I open that arm around, I'm trying to turn my torso towards that side of the room. All right, I'm letting my hips rotate a little bit, so I'm getting some good rotation in my shoulders, my spine, my hips, and so on. All right, we're gonna do one more warm-up move, and this is your wide hip hinge. This is to get a little stretch in the hamstrings. So I'm facing my anchor point with my arms straight out in front of me. I'm gonna back up just a little bit. I'm going to hinge at my hips, keeping a flat back. I'm going to reach my hands towards the anchor point and my hips back behind me. And I'm going to come all the way back up by pressing down on the handles. So hinge at the hips, booty back, fingers forward. I'm going to go until I feel a light hamstring stretch, and then I'm going to come all the way back up. You can keep your knees slightly bent if you'd like. I've got creepy hyperextended knees, so it takes a while for me to feel the stretch, but sometimes I bend my knees a little bit just to keep the joints safe. All right, so we're going to get started. Like I said, we've got 3 rounds of work. It's going to start standing, and then it's going to end up suspended on the floor. So we'll do that 3 times through. Our first move is a Trx Rollout. You've already seen it, so let's get set back up. We're facing away from the anchor point on our toes. We're going to have a 40-second work period for all these standing exercises, okay? So I'm raising my arms out. My plank is going to come forward. I stop when I feel a little shaky, and then I'm going to come back. You don't want to keep going through that shaky spot. That's just telling you you're at the end of your strength zone. So if you've got any shoulder issues, or this one just doesn't feel super great, you can offset your feet by placing one foot in front of the other, and then that way you've got kind of a kickstand here. It's like your self-spotter, so you can always help yourself out with that leg if needed. Now we're going to go to the Trx Overhead Squat. So we're going to stand facing the anchor point. I'm going to put the back of my hand in the back of the foot cradle on both sides here. My thumb is out so it doesn't slide down my arm, but I'm standing straight up. I'm going to pull my hands back towards my face, pulling the straps nice and tight, and then straightening my arms overhead. I'm going to get into a squat stance, drop my tailbone down, and I'm trying to keep my weight over my feet, and I'm trying to press my arms backwards to keep tension on the straps. And then I'm going to stand back up, dropping my tailbone towards the floor, firing my hands backwards, and then standing straight back up. Now, I just caught myself looking at the floor. You don't necessarily need to look at the floor. You can kind of look forward. But what I'm trying to do here is press my arms back all the way through that squat and all the way back up so that I'm not losing any tension in the straps. You should feel your back and your shoulders throughout that move, all right? We just need one strap for the hip drop. So you can drop that handle, pull this other one nice and tight, and face sideways to the anchor point. This hip drop is for your obliques here. I'm gonna put that handle on top of my head. I'm gonna start to walk my feet towards the anchor point, and then all I'm gonna do is drop my hip away from the anchor and then pick it back up, hence the name hip drop. Drop the hip away from the anchor point, pick it back up. Now, I'm keeping my hands on the crown of my head, and I'm letting my head kind of point towards the anchor and then pick back up and point away from the anchor, all right? It's a very subtle move. You don't have to go very far on this one. You just want to make sure you're feeling the sides of your torso here. The other thing you want to think about is as you come up, stop when you can still feel your obliques. Don't keep going all the way to here because that's when you're kind of resting. Everything turns off, all right? So let's go ahead and repeat that on the other side. So I'm going to make sure I'm in line with my anchor point. I'm going to take that handle in both hands, place it on the crown of my head, standing up tall, and then I'm going to walk my feet closer to the anchor point. You don't have to go very far. And I'm trying to get myself into this kind of diagonal plank here, standing plank. I'm going to drop my hips away from the anchor point and then pick them right back up. My elbows are wide. I'm looking straight forward. You're going to be tempted to look at the ground, but try to look forward and try to keep those hands right where they are. As you drop the hips away, you should feel your obliques, and then remember, I just found myself going a little bit too far on the way up. Try to find that spot where you're still feeling your obliques, so it's like a straight line and not all the way up to here where your hips are over your feet, okay? So dropping the hips back, picking them back up, and last one, rest. Okay, so those were your standing exercises. We're now going to go to the floor for our suspended exercises. So we're going to start with the Trx Plank, and you need your straps at mid-calf length. So I'm going to tilt both barrel locks, push these down so that the handles are at the bottom of my kneecaps. All right, I'm going to grab my mat, and I'm going to pause this just for a second just to make sure everybody's good and in, okay? Go ahead and pop your toes in. All right, so you're going to be in plank position with your feet in, facing away from the anchor point, all right? So I've got lean back, toes up underneath, and then I'm going to flip over. 20-second plank, here we go. Elbows down, I'm going to kick my heels back. If you're new to this, drop your knees, and then kick your heels up to lift up, and then drop your knees again. If you're not new to this, just hold your plank up in the air, straight legs, looking at the floor in front of you, and relax. All right, second time, we're gonna do a plank. If you're not used to it, do that knee up and down thing that we just did. If you are used to it, we're gonna add a single leg crunch to this, okay? So I'll give you both options. I like to do mine from my hands, but you can do yours from your forearms if you've got wrist issues. So, like I said, level one, you're just working on holding that plank up so you can straighten the knees and then drop them back down. Level two, if you're good with your plank, you're gonna draw one knee in as you lift your hips slightly and then kick that heel back out. So little crunch, kick the leg out. Little crunch, kick that leg out. Knees straight, heels to handles, okay? Now let's put our heels in, so wiggle out of there, and we're gonna do some hamstring curls. So that was for the front of the hip flexors and the abs. Now we're gonna work the opposite side of that, our hamstrings and our booty. So when my legs are straight, my feet are under the anchor point, fingers in the foot cradles, heels on top. I'm gonna straighten my legs out, lift my hips up, and I'm just pulling my knees in and straightening my legs back out. Pulling the knees in and straightening the legs back out. I'm trying to keep my pelvis off the floor, but still, so my hips are not raising or lowering. If this is too much, you can leave your hips on the ground, just firing your heels straight down, or you can scoot forward past the anchor. All right, so second exercise, we're gonna do the Trx Hip Abduction. And abducting just means taking things away from the center. So hip abduction means you're gonna take your legs away from the center, but you're gonna do that while your hips are staying in the air. It's gonna be super fun, you're gonna love it. Okay, so hands down, hips up, let your ankles just kind of relax in the foot cradles. Both legs are gonna go out, hold for a second, and then slowly and controlled bring them back in. Legs are gonna go out, and legs come back in. Hips are gonna stay where they are. If I look forward for a second at my toes, they're pointing straight up to the ceiling and back in. Now, hands can be on the floor to make this easier. Hands can be off the floor to make this harder. We're gonna do 2 more rounds, so you'll have time to try these again later, okay? So let's go ahead and stand back up. Let's get ready for round 2. That was our first round, all right? We're gonna repeat all these exercises with little changes as we go along. First, we've got the Trx Hip Hinge facing away. So I'm gonna grab my handles, face away from the anchor point, and then I'm gonna come up on my toes, and I'm gonna put the straps right on top of my arms and shoulders. So level 1, I'm gonna bend my knees, shift my hips back, bend at the waist, and then I'm gonna shift my hips forward and come up onto my toes to hit that standing plank. My arms are staying still, but my hips are flexing and straightening, all right? So little bend here, big hip bend, little knee bend, and then straighten back out. If you don't have a wall behind you, try to get even lower. Sit back here, shift your hips forward until you hit that plank, and then come back. If you've got a wall behind you, you can do that with longer straps to give yourself a little bit more room. The point of that one is just to get used to that hip hinge forward. Now we're gonna do a Trx Back Extension, which gives you a hip hinge the other direction, all right? So I'm gonna stand facing my anchor point, my strap length is fine where it is, and I'm gonna walk into this like a big giant X position. So feet wide, arms wide. I'm gonna rock back onto my heels, fold myself in half by dropping the tailbone towards the floor, and then I'm gonna push my hips forward and raise my hands up to come up, and then come up onto my toes. Rock back to my heels, drop my hips back towards the floor, press the hips up, arms go up overhead, and rise up to my toes. So if you feel like you got this, go ahead and start adding in a little bit of speed and smoothing it out a little bit. I'm trying to keep a flat back as I bend at the waist, at the hips, and then straighten back out. Okay, this is the back extension. Rest. Now, we've already done the hip drop. We know what it is. We're just gonna do it again. So I'm gonna drop one handle. I'm gonna stand sideways to my anchor point, pulling this strap tight. I'm gonna put both hands on the handle, on the crown of my head, make sure I'm in line with my anchor point, and walking my feet towards the anchor. From here, I'm gonna drop my hip out, and I'm gonna pick it back up. This hip drop is gonna be the same all 3 rounds, so that way you can just do the move and you don't have to think about anything, all right? So now, one thing that I see happens a lot, and this happens just as we get tired, as my hip comes out, my torso rotates towards the anchor, and you wanna try to prevent that. So I'm gonna look forward the whole time, keep my elbows wide, and basically pretend that there's a wall in front of me and a wall behind me. If I dip forward, I'm gonna hit my face on the wall. Shoulders down, elbows wide, and relax. Same thing, other side. If you work one side, you gotta work the other side. Standing sideways to the anchor point, hands on the crown of my head, elbows wide. And now, if you are hunched forward, it's gonna be hard to get your elbows wide. So try to stand up as tall as you can be, then walk those feet down, all right? Drop the hip away from the anchor point, pick it back up. Now, the bigger the drop, the harder it's gonna be. So if you're new to this, just try a little 2-inch drop and back up. If you're not new to this, a bigger drop is fine. Now, if you don't wanna do a big drop, like maybe that hurts your back or you feel your neck or something like that, Do a smaller range of motion, but if you need it to be harder, just take a little step in to add more resistance. So I can still do a small range of motion, but because I've taken a deeper angle, it's still gonna be a little bit tougher. Rest. All right, we're going back to the floor for that plank, so I gotta get back to mid-calf length. So if you're already there, you're golden. I'm gonna grab my mat and get my toes in. So, quick way to get your toes in. If you're not sure, grab the foot cradles, lay on your back, pull them towards you. My toes are gonna go up through the bottom, and then I'm gonna take one foot on top of the other as I roll over. All right, TRX plank, let's go. You can be on your forearms or your hands. Everybody kick those heels back. Like I said, if you're still working on just holding your plank, take that knee drop and lift back up. For everybody that already knows this one and feels fine with their plank, you can just hold this up at the top and rest. Second one, if you did the single leg crunch last time, you're gonna bump this up by doing both legs in that TRX crunch. So, like I said, I like to be up on my hands, but you can certainly be on your forearms if you've got wrist issues. So we're gonna go from our plank and pull both knees in at the same time. So here's my plank position. Lift the hips, pull the knees in, kick the heels back out. Knees in, heels out. Knees in, heels out. Keep rocking. Now, as you do this, I want you to try to keep a flat back as your knees come in, slight lift of the hips, and then lower the hips back down as you straighten those legs back, all right? So we're going to our hamstring curl. This time we're gonna add the abduction to make a little combo move. So I kicked out, I'm gonna put my heels in, fingers in the bottom of the foot cradles, lay on your back, heels go on top, and then you straighten your legs out. So I'm gonna lift my hips up, do one hamstring curl, and then do one abduction. Legs out and in. One hamstring curl, and then one abduction. Now, like I was saying earlier, hands on the floor is gonna keep you really stable. Hands off the floor is gonna add a challenge to your lower body and your back. Can you keep everything in your torso still while your legs and hips are moving? Rest. All right. Second one we're going to do is the TRX Hip Press. So keeping your heels in, I want you to bend your knees, but I want you to kind of booty shimmy yourself forward. All right. So we're going to do this hip press, but it's a tougher one. So you want to be closer to the anchor point here. So I'm going to keep my knees bent over my hips. I'm going to press my hips into the air and then lower them back down. Now, keep doing that, pressing the hips up, lowering them back to the floor, trying to keep your feet in the same spot. If this is too much and you've got some space on the other side of your anchor point, scoot forward to make this easier. You can have your hands on the floor to help. If you are anchored to a door or a wall and you can't do this, just go slower and use those hands for help, all right? That was round 2. We've just got one more to go. So I'm gonna hop up. I'm gonna leave my straps at mid-calf length. They're fine there. And we've got a hinge into a rollout. So we're gonna take those 2 moves that we already learned up here and we're gonna put them together. So facing away from the anchor point, straps on my arms, I'm gonna back up just a little bit here and bend my knees. So first the hinge. I wanna straighten my hips all the way out. Then the rollout, my arms come up, stop when I get to that shaky spot, lower the hands, and then hinge back at the hips. Straightening the hips and the knees first, raising the arms overhead second, lowering the arms back down, and then hinging back. Now, my rollout is too deep, so I'm gonna take a rollout first. This is a better angle for me, and then bring it back. Now, that's gonna make the hinge really easy, but that's okay. It's one or the other. You can make the hinge harder and the rollout easy, or vice versa. All right. Now we're going to that Trx back extension we did before, but instead of taking the arms overhead, we're gonna pull them into a high row. So I want you to face the anchor, step into this high row position so your elbows are pulling straight back with the palms down. Feet slightly wider than your hips. You're gonna straighten the arms to lower the body. Drop the tailbone back like that back extension. Lift the hips and then pull into your row. Straighten the arms, drop the hips, lift and row. Straighten the arms, drop the hips, lift the hips, row. Okay, so it's like half of a back extension into a high row. So that means your hamstrings, your booty, your back, and your shoulders, and your biceps a little bit are all working as one. You can rock back to your heels and then just go flat-footed. You don't have to go on your toes if you don't want to. All right, and relax. Last time for that TRX hip drop, I'm gonna drop one handle. I'm gonna pull my strap tight, and then I'm gonna stand facing sideways to the anchor point. So third time, you should know it and feel a little bit more comfortable with it now if you weren't already. Hands on the head, feet closer to the anchor. I'm gonna drop my hip down and back up. So we've played a little bit with the range of motion. We've also played a little bit with like changing your angle to make it harder or easier load-wise. The next way that you can challenge yourself is to hover your hands barely off the crown of your head and then keep them directly over the crown of your head as you do this movement. It's a lot more work for your shoulders and arms, but it's a lot more challenging if you're ready to step things up. All right, if that feels too much on your shoulders, just place your hands back on your head. All right, so try to look forward. I just caught myself looking down and relax. Last time, other side, make this a good one. So you're in line with your anchor point, hands on your head, elbows are wide. Go ahead and start adding the load by taking your feet closer to the anchor point. And you can always back that up if you feel like you want different. Dropping my hips away from the anchor point, picking them back up. Dropping my hips away from the anchor point without twisting, picking myself up. So my eyes are forward on the horizon or on this lovely TRX sign in front of me. My elbows are wide. Remember, if you want to make that harder, play with your angle, the range of motion, how big your hip moves, or raise those arms 1 or 2 inches off the crown of your head and let them stay there as you go. Now, your arms are not going side to side. They're staying over your head. So the hard part is keeping them still while the hip does the drop. All right? So last time on the floor, we're going toes in, and we're going to learn our TRX Pike, okay? So I got my mat all ready to go. My straps are mid-calf length. I'm going to lay back and get my heels in the foot cradles by taking them up through the bottom, and then I'm going to flip over this way. So the TRX Pike, I do it best from my hands. You can do yours from your forearms if you want. I'm going to kick my heels back on the handles and straighten my legs for my plank. I'm going to lift my hips, look underneath me, pass me to the back wall, and then lower back down. Picking the hips up, trying to keep a flat back, and then lowering my hips down. One more rep, and back. Good. Now, if you did the single leg crunch and you did the double leg crunch, now we're gonna try the oblique crunch. If you're not ready for that yet, go back to either the double leg or the one leg, or just hold your plank. It's a 20-second move, and now we're taking the knees to one elbow, then the other to work those side angles. So I'm gonna hit my plank here on my hands. I'm gonna draw both knees to my right elbow and then kick my heels back on the handles. Knees to the other elbow and kick my hips back. All right, so you're one side and then the other side. Just make sure you settle your plank before your next rep. Relax. Last time with the heels in, we're gonna repeat what we did last round, all right? So hamstring curl into that hip abduction. I'm just gonna make my foot cradles bigger real fast before I hit the ground. All right, heels in. One hamstring curl, one hip abduction. Hips up, here we go. Curl in, straighten the legs, heels out, back together. Curl in, straighten the legs, heels out, back together. I'm drawing my heels to my hips, keeping my hips stable and level the whole way. So I'm not trying to tilt my hips right to left or front to back. They're just staying where they are. And I've got my arms up to challenge my balance. All right, TRX Hip Press. Again, you can stay back here and pull your feet towards you. It's gonna be, that's gonna be your hardest level here. So do that if you want. If you don't want this to be any harder, do a little forward scooch, a little booty shimmy, and scoot your hips closer, all right? Knees are over your hips. You're pressing your hips straight up and then lowering back down. Now, if you want a small challenge, press the hips up, hold there, lift your arms off, and then lower from there, and you can put your hands back down. Press the hips up, hold there, arms off, lower back down. We got time for one or two more. Hips up, hands off, hold, slowly lower down. One more, hips up, arms off, lower. All right, guys, hopefully you felt the backs of the legs there and your booty. Let's come on out and let's take a little time for stretching, all right? So we had a short warm-up. We also have a short stretch, but that's okay. If you work it, you stretch it, right? So first we're gonna take a little chest stretch. All that time on our shoulders, we wanna open that up. So I'm gonna grab my handles, face away from the anchor point, and put my thumbs up at about chest height. My arms are kind of out to the sides here. I'm gonna stand up tall and just walk forward, letting the handles pull my arms back. All right, my body's up tall. I'm looking forward instead of down. I'm gonna walk back for a little rest, and I'm gonna go right back out for these last 10 seconds. Shoulders down and back, walking out. I can get a little bit farther this time, which is nice about taking a second set. It's the nice thing about that. Thumbs up and rest. We're gonna go to the low back stretch with rotation. So I'm gonna face the anchor point. I'm gonna straighten my arms out, and then from here, this is just a decompression for the spine, so I wanna let gravity do most of the work. My arms are straight in front of me. All I'm gonna do is drop my tailbone straight back. Now, if it feels good enough for you to just hang here, just hang here. I'm gonna bend my left knee and rotate my torso to the right for some rotation, looking up at the ceiling if I can. Straightening my leg, come back to center. I'm gonna bend my right knee this time and rotate to the left side of the room, trying to look up to the ceiling if possible, and coming back to center. All right, I'm gonna do a standing figure four. This is just to get my hips a little stretch from those hip presses. Elbows at my side. I'm gonna center my left foot with the anchor point. I'm gonna cross my right ankle over my left knee and try not to fall over. I'm gonna drop this right knee back. Now, you can do a couple different ways. You can hinge forward, holding onto those handles, and then you can stand right back up, okay? Hinge forward and stand up. And just work through some slow reps like that, trying to keep your shoulders back. The other thing you can do is straighten both arms and just sit back like you're sitting in a chair. And then from there, take your tailbone towards the floor. Okay, a little deeper stretch if you're more flexible. Let's switch sides, do the other leg. I'm gonna center my right foot with the anchor point this time. I'm standing up tall with my elbows at my sides. I'm gonna take the left ankle across my right knee, dropping the left knee back a little bit. I'm gonna sit my hips back, hinging at the hips, trying to keep a flat upper back, so keeping my shoulders back, and then stand back up. Again, you can go through reps of this, hinging and then straightening, or you can take that lean back, so straightening the arms, trying to keep your back up like your back is against a wall, and then just shifting down towards the floor with that tailbone. Okay, rest. Last thing is just our offset hip hinge, and this is a hamstring stretch after those hamstring curls. You might like this one. Straightening the arms out, stepping the right foot forward. I'm gonna take my feet apart just a little bit. I'm gonna pull my right hip backwards towards the wall behind me, and then hinge forward until I feel a nice stretch in that hamstring of the right leg. So the back part of your right thigh is where you wanna feel this. If you're not super flexible, back up so that your hands are about shoulder height, and then take it forward. You can bend that front knee a little bit and then straighten it to get a little rest. You can bend the back knee and tilt your tailbone up to get a higher hamstring stretch. Press down to come up, and let's do the other side. Palms are down, left foot forward, right toe back. Now check your back foot. It's gonna wanna turn out, so try to turn that heel straight back. Tailbone sticks back towards the back wall. Proud chest leads the way forward. Stop when you feel that stretch in the hamstring. And like I said, your hips are gonna wanna open up because that's easier to get further. So I try to think about pulling my left hip back before I even start and then cruising forward. You can bend that back knee a little bit and tilt your tailbone up towards the ceiling, and that finishes things off. All right, guys, so hopefully you felt all those muscles around your core, your hips, your hammies. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.